So I'm going to show you how to restore a cast iron skillet. Now, people for months on my TikTok have been asking me to post a full restoration video front to back. So I'm going to show you from beginning to end how to restore yourself a piece of cast iron, whether it looks like this, all gunky, a little bit of rust, or something that looks like this. And I'm going to show you a method that you could do simply at home without any fancy setup. And when I mean fancy, I mean something like an electrolysis tank like this one or this one here. Right now I'm restoring a griddle in my E-tank, hooks up to a battery charger. It's a lot more complex setup than what we're going to be using to restore this skillet, which is right here, our Lye Bath. In another video, I'm going to show you much more in depth how to set up a Lye Bath, but I'm going to run you through it very briefly. Right here we have our lye crystals, which are 100% lye. I get mine from Lowe's. And then the other thing you'll need is a sturdy bin, a number 2 or 5 plastic bin, and then you'll need water. So the ratio is 5 gallons of water for 1 pound of lye. Now this container is 2 pounds of lye, so what I recommend is you always add your water first, then your lye. That's very important. So you're gonna add 5 gallons of water and then pour in about half of this container. And when you do this, please wear gloves. I highly recommend eye protection as well. And when you make your Lye Bath, it will look clear. The reason mine looks so dark and black is because all the gunk that got released from my other restorations. So again, get yourself a number 2 or 5 plastic bin, add 5 gallons of water, and then half this container, about 1 pound of lye. What the Lye Bath does, it will strip this skillet down to bare iron. So it'll take off all that grease and gunk and buildup, and it'll strip it down to bare iron. Now, it won't take off rust. We'll get there in another moment or so, but we'll need a vinegar bath for the rust. But for now, we're gonna drop this skillet into our Lye Bath. And the skillet I'm gonna be restoring is an old Wagner. This style was made between 1898 and 1915, so it's really old. So let's submerge it in the lye. I have a bunch of other pieces in here as well. You could do multiple pieces. So now the skillet is submerged underneath my Lye Bath. What I'm gonna do is, generally I like to check in about 24 hours, but you can leave this in for as long as you want. You can leave it in for days, weeks, months. It's gonna have no adverse effects on your cast iron. So I'll probably try and check on it tomorrow if I'm real busy, then maybe the following day or so. And I have a lid on top to, keep things from falling into it and to stop some evaporation. All right, so it's been about a day and a half. Let's take the skillet out of the Lye Bath. And already you can see how much of that gunk and old seasoning has come off. I'm gonna take this upstairs and give it a good scrubbing with soap and steel wool. So after a good scrubbing, you can see how great this looks. All of the old seasoning and carbon buildup has been stripped off of this skillet. Now there is a tiny bit of rust, not much on this skillet. So it's gonna go in my vinegar bath to get rid of any rust that still might be on here. Okay, so the skillet's gonna be going in the vinegar bath, and the vinegar bath is super simple to set up. You just need a bin, and the ratio of water to white distilled vinegar is 1:1. So 1 gallon of water, 1 gallon of distilled vinegar. And unlike the Lye Bath, it could be in any order. The vinegar first and the water, vice versa. It doesn't matter. Just make sure you put enough in your bin that you could submerge whatever you're restoring completely. So I'm gonna submerge it in the vinegar bath for about 40 minutes. That's generally the time I like to do. You could do anywhere between 40 and 60 minutes. I mean, some cast iron enthusiasts only say 20 minutes soaks. I don't think that's quite enough. I like the 40-minute mark, but I wouldn't leave your cast iron in here for more than an hour. The vinegar can eventually start to damage the cast iron. It can affect the way it seasons. So you don't want to leave this in here for, overnight or several days. I like to do about 40 minutes. Then I'm going to take it out and scrub it down and see what it looks like and see if it needs another round. Okay, it's been 45 minutes. Let's take it out. And yeah, you see that redness that got drawn out? It's much more red looking than 40 minutes ago. That's the vinegar pulling the rust out of the skillet. So let's take this upstairs, get it scrubbed down. Now, when you see me scrub down the skillet, I'm going to now make sure my water is cold when I'm scrubbing after the vinegar bath. Because if I'm going to season this after, I don't want any flash rust to set in. And when you clean the skillet with cold water, that helps slow down the flash rust. All right, so it's hard to tell from this angle, but that redness in there, and even this big dark spot in the center of the skillet, that's rust, which is why I always run my pieces through the vinegar bath after the lye bath, because a lot of times after the lye bath, they'll still look good, maybe some slight discoloration, and it doesn't look like rust, but that vinegar will pull out that rust and make it a lot more obvious when you take it out. So some pieces only need one vinegar bath and they look great. This, like I said, has a lot of rust left. So I'm gonna put this back in the vinegar bath for another 40 minutes and see how it looks. I have a feeling it's gonna probably need a third, possibly even a fourth bath, just to make sure it looks as perfect as possible. All right, so it's been another 40 minutes. Second round of the vinegar bath here. And then, yep, you can see that even more red has been pulled out, just as I thought it would. More rust to scrub off, so let's do it. All right, so after another good scrubbing, you can see that that darkness has greatly been reduced. You can just see that right about here and here is where that rust really remains. So my guess is this is gonna take about another 2 rounds in the vinegar bath. Now, most of the pieces I do that go from lye to vinegar don't need to take this long. This is not that common for me. So usually I'll strip it down in lye and maybe 1, maybe 2 rounds in the vinegar bath. This one's gonna take a few just to make sure all that rust is gone. So I'm gonna run it through a couple more and I'll let you know how many rounds it went through. Okay, so this actually went through 6 rounds in the vinegar bath, which is a bit much. Most restorations will take less than this, but I'm glad it did because I'm showing you that this is probably one of the most difficult restorations to do. Now you can see that big dark patch in the middle is completely gone. These little divots here, this is called sulfur pitting. I'll talk about what that is in a second. Now, after this final scrub, after the last vinegar bath, I towel dried it. I used paper towels and I did not heat dry it. If I put this on my stovetop, it's immediately gonna start to tarnish and flash rust. So I dry with paper towel and now I'm gonna get ready to season. So I'm not gonna go too in-depth with the seasoning process because my previous video, I showed you in an entire 11 minutes how to season your cast iron. But we're gonna get this skillet all oiled up. Now, I'm using something special that I'll talk about in the imminent future. But in my seasoning video that I posted, I was using just regular grapeseed oil. That one I highly recommend if you're not gonna use something fancy like this. Now we're gonna get the oil all over the skillet, every square inch. Now that the skillet is oiled up, I'm gonna take my secondary rag and wipe all that oil off. Once I do that, I'm gonna take my super clean rag and wipe it even further, wipe off all that excess oil. All right, so the skillet's been oiled up, it's been completely wiped down, all the excess oil is off. I'm gonna now put it in the oven at 450 degrees for 1 hour. Then I'm gonna take it out, repeat the seasoning process 3 more times for a total of 4 rounds of seasoning, and then I'm gonna show you guys what it looks like. So the seasoning process is complete, which means this restoration is complete. Now I actually put this through 5 rounds of seasoning. Since this went through so many rounds in a vinegar bath, it just looked like it needed that 1 extra round of seasoning. Now the bottom isn't as pretty. Some of that rust left some discoloration on the bottom. It might blend in over time. And what looks like little tiny holes in the center, which you saw from the beginning of this video, is called pitting, sulfur pitting to be exact. This skillet was used over a coal stove at one point. That's how old this thing is. And the sulfur from the coal eventually ate away a little bit at the bottom. And I'm really glad that I used this skillet for this full length restoration video, because this was kind of a more difficult one, even though it really wasn't that hard. Here's another restoration I just did, and it looks perfect basically. There's no damage from the rust, there's no pitting. Usually, like I said, on a skillet like this, even though I used electrolysis, if I was using my Lye Bath, it would have been probably in my Lye Bath for about a day, maybe two, and then probably honestly 1-2 rounds tops in the Vinegar Bath. So this one definitely was a more difficult restoration. So just to recap, if you're restoring yourself a piece of cast iron, you're gonna wanna build yourself a Lye Bath. That's gonna remove all of the carbon buildup, crud, old seasoning. Then you're gonna follow it up with your Vinegar Bath. That's strictly for rust. Now, at first this didn't look very rusted. If you're starting with a piece that looks super rusted, you might start with your Vinegar Bath, get rid of a lot of that rust, then maybe put it in your Lye Bath, and then you might go back and forth between vinegar and lye. It doesn't have to be lye first, then vinegar. Most of the times it is. And make sure you do scrub it in between your lye and vinegar baths, or vice versa. And make sure right before you season it, after you scrub it down, you towel dry it only, do not heat dry it. So if you follow these simple steps, you can easily restore yourself a piece of cast iron. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.